Welcome everyone to our weekly Torah Shiur on the weekly Torah Parasha, Torah portion that we read every week. This week's Parasha is Beha'alotcha, or in the Ashkenaz pronunciation, Beha'alotcha, which means when you basically rise up to kindle the menorah, the lamp of the seven candles. Okay, so just as every week, a small disclaimer. My name is Zohar. I'm a Jewish person, Orthodox observance, and I'm not a rabbi. If you need a rabbi for guidance in any matter, I can direct you to one of my rabbis that speak Hebrew or English. May HaShem be with us and guide us always in the path of truth. So there's a lot going on in this week's parasha. We'll try to get everything in with our available time. Welcome, and we'll begin now. So this week's parasha starts in Sefer Bamidbar, which is Numbers, Perek Chet, Pasuk Aleph, which is chapter 8, verse 1. The Torah begins with speaking about Hashem's commandment to Moshe Rabbeinu to speak to Aaron about when he comes to kindle the candles. He should light the candles basically for the seven candles. We'll just kind of read through the whole parasha quickly to name the main subjects, and then we'll go back to the interesting points so that we can understand a little bit better. Also, right afterwards, the Torah explains the making of the menorah itself, taking the Levim from within the nation of Israel and to purify them, and all of the ritual in order to purify them and separate them from the nation of Israel. Afterwards, it mentions about the second year of the Israelites being in the desert, that they had to do the Pesach sacrifice. The first one was when they left Egypt that night, or I should say the day the morning or afternoon before. They slaughtered the Pesach, and then they went out into the desert in the whole event in Mount Sinai and so on. And this was already the second year, which means 12 months have passed, and the commandment is to slaughter another lamb. And then it talks about Pesach Sheni, the second Pesach, as we remember a month and a half ago. I mentioned it on the group, where it's the second Passover, which is exactly 30 days after the first Passover. We're given, God gave opportunity to those who were impure in the camp to do that holiday sacrifice and slaughter that lamb and then eat from the lamb, even though their time has passed. Usually you don't get like a second chance to do a holiday if the holiday passes. If you miss the date, you miss the date. But God commanded Moshe Rabbeinu that they would be able to not miss that opportunity and eat lamb. They were impure because they were carrying the bones of Joseph or carrying the bones of the other leaders of the tribes. As we know in the Midrash, that they were also taken out of Egypt. So a person that comes in contact with a dead body or an object that is touching a dead body, like a coffin, for example, or a bed, becomes instantly impure, and that will render him unable to participate in the holiday ritual of eating the Passover sacrifice. So God commanded Moshe Rabbeinu that they have another chance. It was 30 days exactly after the original Passover date. So so that they have an opportunity. Basically, we learn from that someone who wants to purify himself and to participate in the path of God gets another chance. So this is one of the places in the Torah where we learn that people get another chance when they want to come closer to God. The Torah continues. It speaks about the day that the tabernacles was erected, the temporary temple, or I should say the portable temple in the desert. There was a cloud that covered the temple, and in the evening it would look like a cloud of fire until the morning. That's how it would always be. And according to the cloud, when it would rise and go, the Israelites would travel in the desert, and when it would stop, that's where they would camp. It could be a matter of 1 or 2 days, or it could be months or years that the cloud would either stop or continue. There's a commandment onward in the Torah, this parasha, which is Numbers Bamidbar, which is Numbers chapter 10, verse 1, Pasuk Aleph, and it talks about Hashem commands Moshe Rabbeinu to craft 2 silver trumpets, and these trumpets would be to call the nation for a meeting, or to move around the camps or something like that, to basically notify, to get the attention of the tribes. And there's different ways that they would use it. If the children of Aaron, the Kohens, the priests, would use these in a certain way, it would be, they would use it also for war, to let people know that there's a war, or before war they would blow the trumpets, and also on the holidays they would blow these trumpets, these 2 silver trumpets. Just a footnote, they would every so often, every few generations, they would recreate these trumpets, so that they were in good condition. It was always 2 silver trumpets in very good condition. Once again, I'm just, whoever missed the beginning, there's a lot going on in this week's Torah portion, so I'm just running through the different events and chapters in this parasha, so we can cover all of the information, and then I'll head back and give some insights on some specific parts of this parasha. It goes on to the Torah goes on to explain to us which tribe would move first, and who was their leader, and when they would move forward after which tribe, in which order. And then right after that, Jethro decides to go back to where he came from Midian. Moshe tries to convince him to stay. Jethro stays with him for a while, and then the Torah has like a little bit of a break. Well, before the break, the Torah mentions that the Ark of the Covenant, the Ark with the images, the sculptures of the 2 golden angels that had the tablets of the 10 Commandments inside, also the crushed ones, the first ones, and also the second ones, and also the jar of the man was inside. It went in front of the camp 3 days. It would go alone. It would search for a place for the Israelites to rest, and that's where they stopped, to make sure that it's a good place for the nation to rest. And then it says that the cloud of God was upon them, on top of them, when they would go from the camp. Then the Torah breaks, and it has like a separate section. This is something that Moses would say when the Ark of the Covenant would start to go on its own. it says, "Rise, HaShem, and disperse your enemies, and the ones who hate you will run away from you." Chapter 10, verse 35. So it starts, "When the ark would journey, Moses said, 'Arise, HaShem, and let your foes be scattered. Let those who hate you flee from before you.' And when it rested, he would say, 'Reside tranquility, O HaShem, among the myriad thousands of Israel.'" And then it has another break and it continues. Our sages explain to us that this break actually separates the book of Numbers into three. Everything from the beginning of the book of Numbers until this part was one book. These 2 verses is one whole book, it's considered, according to the teachings of our sages. And then right after, it's from that point on until the end of the book, it's another book. So it essentially turns the 5 books of Moses into 7 books of Moses. But this is like a deep teaching from our sages. It has a lot of things to do with this specific parasha that it's in, and other spiritual things. But maybe we'll get to it a little bit later. And then the Torah continues afterwards. Some people when they left Sinai, when they started to move a few days away from Sinai, they were complaining. Ramban says, Nachmanides says, when the people left Sinai, which was not far from populated areas, to venture into the great, desolate, and unknown wilderness, they grew frantic and wondered how would they be able to survive. They acted as if they were truly in pain and had the right to complain and bemoan their fate. That was according to the Ramban. And Rashi says, in their mood of rebellion and self-pity, they wanted God to hear and be angered. They succeeded and paid a heavy price. Wherever it says in the Torah, Vayhi, the word Vayhi in Hebrew, it alludes to the reoccurrence of a previously existing situation. Thus when the stubborn willingness to sin can be so powerful that people become capable of repeating their folly even after seeing a miraculous punishment. So that's one of the reasons that we have that in our natural instinct, that even after we've seen punishments and consequences, after a while it happens that we repeat those mistakes. But Hashem is not interested in that, and Hashem got angry at the nation. People started dying from a fire. It says the fire of God, which is this was fault of the mixed multitude. We mentioned in the beginning, alongside the Israelites when they left Egypt, mixed multitude of nations and slaves and regular Egyptians that were in Egypt left with the Israelites. And some even say they were more in numbers than the Israelites themselves. And they're still living with the Jewish nation until this day, causing many of the troubles, unfortunately. And these were people that Moshe Rabbeinu converted to Judaism without God's consent, because Moses saw it in their, deep into their soul, that they have, if they come back into righteousness, into the way of God and get close to God, they can have a big part in the rectification of the world. So he decided to go ahead with it. He didn't think it would be a problem, but God reprimanded him for it afterwards, at the sin of the golden calf. But when God's fire ate the nation, it says at the edge of the camp, and that's where the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, were residing. They were always at the edge of the camp, like after the tribes, not alongside the tribes. They were right behind, following. That's where, and they're most of the time, not all of them, but most of the times Israel, it says the Israelites, or the nation, I should say, were complaining in the desert or did something wrong in the desert. It was actually these people that were starting the whole situation and even getting some Israelites to join them. But most of the time, it was them, not all the time. Like for instance, the sin of the spies that went into the land and came back and spoke bad about the land. That was Israelites. That wasn't the mixed multitude. They shouted at or screamed to Moshe, and Moshe davened and prayed to God, and the fire resided. And then they wanted to eat meat, and they started to complain again about the fish and the watermelons and different things that they ate in Egypt. They were complaining that they have only the manna, and the manna was something very special. The manna had, according to what we know, that the manna was something like, I don't know if I have to say like popcorn, but now the manna was like a coriander seed, and its color was like the color of a bedolach. Bedolach is like a crystal, and the people would stroll and gather it outside their tent and grind it in a mill or pound it in a mortar and cook it in a pot or make it into cakes. And its taste was like the taste of dough kneaded with oil. When the dew descended upon the camp at night, the manna would descend upon it. Our sages teach us that any flavor, basically, except some few specific ones, the manna would be able to, you would have any flavor you want. And if you ate a piece of manna and you would imagine in your mind that you're eating an ice cream, it would taste just like ice cream in the flavor that you like it. Or if you wanted it to taste like meat, it could taste like meat. Or if you wanted it to taste like a soup, it would taste like a soup. It would be it's a miraculous food. It's a spiritual food. It came from God directly. You know, it was even so much so that there was no excrement. No one had to go to the bathroom because it was spiritual food. It had everything the body needed and nothing of waste. So people in the desert for 40 years, almost 40 years I should say, they didn't need to go to the bathroom, basically. Also because the well of Miriam, the stone that was following them in the desert and gave the nation water, it was a miraculous event. The water came there from a miracle. It's not like it was natural water. The stone would basically, for those who don't know and aren't aware, the stone would follow the Israelites to wherever they went in the desert, and when they camped, the stone would gush out of water, and it would have so much water that it would circulate around all the tribes, and it would make like rivers all around the tribes, and in so much quantity that if there was a person that wanted to go visit his friend from a different tribe, he would have a little raft and go on the water to the other tribes. We're talking about millions of people. So, and from one stone there would come out that amount of water. So obviously that water was a miracle water, just like the food. And also people didn't have to do excrement or go to use the restroom their entire time that they were in the desert. At the end of this book, we'll read about the war against the Midianites. That right before, how did they come to that war? Because of Balak and Bilam, they tried to curse them, and then they couldn't succeed. So they sent their women and they sinned with them. And their condition of the women for the men to sin with them was first they have to eat, and only when they eat their food that they give them were they finally able to go to the bathroom, and they had to do their excrement on right in front of their idol. That was the way to worship one of the ways to worship that idol. And so that's how also we see that the Jews never had to go to the bathroom, because they never ate natural food from that was existing in the world. They had the man. So people were crying about the food and they wanted the meat. So Moshe couldn't handle it. It was very difficult for Moshe, and also HaShem was angry at the situation. And so Moses finally asks HaShem, so please let's find a way to divide the weight of the nation. It's too much. So God commands then Moshe Rabbeinu to to bring 70 from the elders of the nation, that are from the elders and from the policemen, and bring them to the tent of meeting. And I will come there to speak with you, and I will bestow from my spirit that I gave upon to you, and I will give unto them, and they will carry the weight of the nation with you, and you won't have to carry the weight of the nation on your own. And then there's different commandments that he gives Moshe Rabbeinu. He gives him a blessing and a curse at the same time. He said you will eat meat until it can come out of your nose, and it actually happened. People ate, and some of the people even died. And Moshe Rabbeinu, it goes back to the whole part of the 70 elders, and they were getting the blessing from HaShem, and they were starting to get prophecy. And there were 2 people left in the camp. They didn't go to the tent of meetings, and they were in the camp and saying prophecy. They weren't supposed to. And Joshua says, the servant of, or the assistant, I should say, of Moshe Rabbeinu, he was telling that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was telling Moshe Rabbeinu, there are 2 people in the camp, and they're prophesying. What should we do with them? Should we stone them or something? Because it's not allowed. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, who would give? And the entire nation would be prophesied, and the blessing of God would be on everyone. It's a good thing. But Joshua was concerned. It doesn't say it in the text, but our sages teach us in Rashi, actually, Rashi, the commentator Rashi, that he heard them prophesying that Joshua will take over for Moses. And at that time, it didn't seem conceivable for Joshua to be the one to take over. So he wanted, for him, it was like a level of blasphemy or something, and a high level of disrespect for Moshe. Although it doesn't say it in the Torah explicitly, Moses had the level of king. He was actually the king of the nation. But he was so humble, he would never call himself a king, and no one would ever call him a king to his face. But the laws that apply to a king, an Israelite king, apply to Moshe Rabbeinu. And when the king's honor is, if the king's honor is disrespected in any way, then he's not allowed to oversee it and let it pass. For example, if a father's honor is disrespected by his son, the father has the choice to say, okay, no, it's okay, I'll let it go, and I'll teach him otherwise to behave in a different way, and he'll grow out of it, and he can find a solution, or to, how do I say, a different perspective in order to oversee what his son did to him. But a king is not allowed to do that. And if king's respect is dishonored, if he will not, or a sage, a tzaddik, one of the greats of the nation, if their disrespect if their honor is disrespected, then, and they don't do anything about it, then God will do something about it. That's why we see at the end of King David's life, he said, when I was running away from Avshalom, my son, he's telling this to King Solomon before on his deathbed, you have to take care of a few people and make sure that they die, because they disrespected me, and since it was the respect of the king that they dishonored, from heaven, there's a law that they must be dealt with. So he gave that task to his son Solomon. The next part is Miriam talking about Moses. Miriam and Aaron, they talked about Moses. They said Lashon Hara, which is the evil tongue. Many people think that if it's the truth, they're allowed to say it. And evil tongue is telling lies about someone. But that's actually incorrect. telling lies about someone is something completely different. It's called motzi diba, and it's a different sin, even a greater sin. But even when you tell the truth about someone, if it comes out to be something negative, like we spoke before, like a negative, even if it's true, but it's something negative that will bring someone into a bad light, in anybody's eyes, then that's lashon hara. Miriam, and this is actually one of the obligations of every Jewish person, every day to remember what Miriam did in the desert and what God did to Miriam in return, so that we should be careful not to speak lashon hara. So basically, she spoke about the woman. I wonder how they. Okay, Kushit. Kushit means from the land of Kush. We are actually, Africa is a land of Kush. It's one of Noah's grandchildren, and he inherited and came down to Africa. So Kush is Africa, and he had a woman from Kush. Midian was considered at the time in Kush, in the continent of Kush. So basically, she was a dark-skinned woman. Most Israelites were actually dark-skinned at the time. I don't know if black completely, but definitely Middle Eastern is dark. Our sages, Rashi says that she was Kushit from the language of beautiful. She was also very beautiful. But basically, what happened is that God requested Moshe Rabbeinu to leave the woman, his woman, so that he can be with Moshe Rabbeinu on a different level. So Miriam thought that because Moses was a prophet, he could only get closer to HaShem and perform his obligation as a prophet if he leaves his spouse. So she was thinking, well, if Moshe is a prophet and Aaron and Miriam are also prophets, so God is also talking about us. Maybe we should also leave our spouses. That was considered the evil tongue. So suddenly, so God listened and heard that, and then God testifies on Moses in the Torah that he is the most humble person from all mankind on the face of the earth forever. And suddenly Hashem says to Moshe and Aaron and Miriam, 3 of you go out to the tent of meeting. And then God came down in a cloud, called Aaron and Miriam as only, and he said, listen to me right now. You should know that all the prophets, you included, are getting your revelations when you're down on the ground, or you're unconscious, or you're in a dream. And Moshe, he's the only one that's he's not like you. He or any other prophet in the world. He is in my entire house. He's the most loyal. He's the only one that's trusted, on to the level of 110%, for example. I will speak to him like face to face, supposedly face to face, and not in riddles, but in a vision, in a picture, and like he would show him a video basically, and he would not have like any doubt. Like the other prophets have like dreams or visions, and they have to like quickly write down what they dreamt and saw to not to lose their prophecy, and to figure out what it means practically, and to convey the message to the nation, or to do God's will. But Moshe was not like that. So right away, so Hashem got angry on them, and he went, and Hashem went from there. And then when the cloud moved away from Miriam, she suddenly looked like she had leprosy. She had sara'at, like we learned in the previous Torah portions. And Aaron turned around to Miriam, and he saw that she had sara'at, because he was actually the Kohen, and he had to diagnose her, as we learned previously. And then they they requested from Moshe, please don't blame us. We realized that we sinned. It's all our fault. And Moshe prayed and davened to HaShem to cure her. And then God said she must be outside the camp for 7 days. Then she will be collected. And then after 7 days, after the camp, after 7 days that she was outside the camp, the whole nation waited for Miriam to come back to her place in the camp after 7 days. And they didn't go without her, obviously. They waited for her. That was in the merit that she went to look for Moses in the bush. She didn't when he was in the basket in the Nile, she was there looking after him. That's because in that merit, the whole nation waited for her. That's what our sages teach us. So basically, after that, the nation went from this place Chatzerot, and they camped in the desert of Paran, which is actually Saudi Arabia. I wanted to go back to the beginning and mention a few key points very shortly, if possible. It talks about the beginning of the parasha, how Aaron was commanded to he was the one in charge of kindling the lights in the menorah, the candle holder in the temple. We see that this comes right after the previous week's parasha, where all the presidents and the leaders of the tribes bring sacrifices in order to inaugurate the altar, the big altar, in the temple, in the portable temple, the tabernacles. And Rashi explains to us that when he saw that everyone was bringing forth gifts and offerings, and he was not commanded to do so, he couldn't bring anything. He felt very bad. So God came to him. He said, "No, yours is even greater than theirs. When you kindle these lights, they illuminate the whole world with the light of God and the Torah. Not only that, so it will be that you will see that in the generations to come, every year, all the Israelites will light the Hanukkah candles. Not only in the holy temples, the 2 holy temples afterwards, but after the event of Hanukkah, all the Israelites light the Hanukkah candles, and they are lit every year by all the Jews. And this is one of the miracles that happens even to the non-Orthodox Jews. They also light Hanukkah candles. It's some things have like extra luck. I don't know if we can say luck, but some commandments that even the people that don't really connect to God or don't even believe in God, for the holiday of Hanukkah, they light that menorah candle. So it's one of the things that God gave Aaron, and then Aaron was accepting of it. We have to remember that to always give people a second chance, and when they want to rectify their way, to make a way for them to be able to go on the straight path, and not to disqualify them because they did something wrong, and that's it. I want to say that Miriam was not a bad person. She loved Moshe Rabbeinu very much. He's his older sister, and she was the one that saved him from, in the bush. She told the Batya, the daughter of Paro, to feed it from her mother, and so on. So she was not looking to say something bad about Moshe. But we learned that as great as a person is, that's how much more strict God is with his judgment on them. So the point is that we have to learn to speak properly about anyone and everyone. Because Lashon Hara, we see from here that the severity of the sin of evil tongue is in God's eyes. May we all merit to behave properly in the eyes of God and the ones that are closest to us. Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom.